Live like no one else so that later you can live and give like no one
There
else.
we go. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like being willing to make the sacrifices now
Right.
so that later on you can have an amazing, abundant life full of peace.
Right.
It's like it may be a little bit challenging right now to save and to pay off debt and to do all these different things, but it's so that you can get to a spot where you have total financial peace and freedom.
Let's make a list. I love lists. I love checklists. I know this is not a checklist that you can check off in a day, but let's go through these baby steps of how we as adults can be financially responsible, but then teach that to our kids as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so important that parents, kind of wrap their head around money themselves because like you said, there can be shame, there can be intimidation in talking about it, but it's like no matter what your situation is, if you're still dealing with student loan debt, if you're frustrated because maybe, you still have credit cards or you haven't built wealth the way that you want, right now, today, you can fix that. You can start working your way to a great financial position. So the baby steps, number one is saving $1,000 starter emergency fund. So having that little bit of cushion when you start the steps. Baby step 2 is paying off all of your consumer debt. This is credit cards, it's student loans, it's car loans, it's personal loans. This is where we get rid of all of that. And a lot of people say this is like the hardest step because this is where you kind of got to go scorched earth. We are tackling this. We're using this thing called the debt snowball. So you line up your debts from smallest to largest, and you start paying them off from smallest to largest. So you are going gazelle intense. You're going as tense as you can to try to pay all this off at once. And so you attack that smallest debt. And once that debt is paid off, and you're paying minimum on the rest, once that's off, you're going to roll that debt into the next smallest debt and then have more to pay on that. And then you pay that off. And then you just keep going like a snowball. And before you know it, you're out of consumer debt, which feels amazing. And I know it sounds intimidating. Some people are probably listening going, oh, I feel like that's going to take so long. But we found that most people pay off their debt in 18 to 24 months in baby step 2. Baby step 3 is where you save a fully funded emergency fund. So that's 3 to 6 months in expenses. Baby step 4 is where you start saving 15% towards retirement. Baby step 5 is saving for kids' college. Baby step 6 is you're going to pay off your house, which I know is so weird in our culture, but amazing when you think about what it would feel like to have no payments in the world, to owe no one any money. It's just incredible. And then baby step 7 is where you build wealth and give. And it's been very exciting to be a part of Ramsey and to see a lot of people see us as like the get out of debt company, but it's amazing because we're actually such a wealth building company. We have, Dave wrote a book last year called Baby Step Millionaires. And there's so many people coming through this building who have become millionaires following these super, super simple steps. It sounds like, that's why we said God and grandma's way of doing money. It's not that difficult. You don't have to be the math whiz to become a Baby Steps millionaire. So it's super exciting that anyone can do it.
Yeah. I remember when we went through the program many years ago, him saying something, and I'm going to completely botch this phrase, but you will probably know it. And it was something like, spend like no one else so you can give like no one else, or save like no one else so you
live
can give
like no one else so that later you can live and give like no one
there
else.
We go. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like being willing to make the sacrifices now.
Right.
So that later on you can have an amazing, abundant life full of peace.
Right.
It's like it may be a little bit challenging right now to save and to pay off debt and to do all these different things, but it's so that you can get to a spot where you have total financial peace and freedom.
Sure. And be able to impact God's kingdom. I mean, I think that's one of the greatest things when we are able to be financially responsible like that, is that we can then go out and use what the Lord has blessed us with to impact others. I know that we have been on the receiving end of that so many times. And I know so many people listening to this podcast, as we were fundraising for the movie. And even with this, I mean, really the Schoolhouse Rocked ministry is a full-time ministry for our family. And so we have sponsors for the podcast. And then we have people who give financially to help support the ministry. And it's incredible to me that these people, the Lord just puts it on their hearts and that they're willing to give part of what the Lord has blessed them with in order to support us as a ministry. And that goes for all sorts of ministries, whether it's the church or whether it's missions or, whatever it is, that those people are willing to just say, you know what, God has blessed me abundantly, and we want to then put back into God's kingdom. And I think
That's
there's no better way
incredible.
to live. So yeah, it's
And
absolutely awesome.
it's such a dream and so exciting to get to baby step 7 because it's like
Yeah.
to get to be that person who pours into ministry,
Right.
who doesn't have any fear around money and can just think through, what does God want me to do right now in this season?
Yeah.
And to have the flexibility to go out and actually do it without money stress is just such a
Right.
gift.
Yes. Yeah. You talk about money stress, and that is something that is real. We've had it.
Mhm.
I know most people have had it, and it just weighs on you. It's such a burden to have that stress of debt just sitting on you. And
It
oh,
really
that
does.
is,
It's
oh,
it's a lot, and a lot of
yeah.
people don't feel like they got financial literacy early on. They don't feel like they
Right.
learned, in high school and going
Right.
into college how to do basics of money, which is so
Yeah.
critical, and then they find themselves down the road stressed
Right.
and frustrated. So that's part of why I'm so passionate is because
Yeah.
it's like I want to help people realize that you don't have to stay in those feelings of icky stress around money
Right.
forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it affects your whole life. I mean, it affects your whole family. You hear the statistics about how many people, their marriages fall apart because of financial stress. And,
Mhm.
you've got in laws, you've got financial stress, you've got other things that play into that. But financial burden is huge, and families can fall apart simply because of that. And that's a hard place to be. And so I love that you guys really work to help people not be at that point in their lives. So I do find it interesting. And I remember again, as we went through this, just it was so interesting that you first say, first, before you start paying off your debt, you save. Explain that really quickly, why you say save $1,000 first, and then
Mhm.
you move into paying off your consumer debt.
Yeah, just save $1,000. So a lot of people want to get a huge emergency fund before they pay off their debt, but we're saying just save $1,000 so it can be that cushion
Mhm.
between, you and your focus and paying off debt and Murphy. So if your air conditioner goes out or if something happens to your car, that little bit of
Mhm.
cushion to kind of protect you to keep you on that debt payoff journey. But a lot of people also argue, they're like, is that enough? That's a little bit nerve-wracking. But we only say $1,000 because we want you to feel that fire under you to get out of debt. We want
Right.
you to feel the discomfort of, oh my gosh, that's not a lot of margin. So I'm going to run as fast as I can to pay this debt off as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Okay. So let's put that in terms of children and us teaching our kids, because obviously we're not going to say to our 10-year-old, you need to save $1,000, before you can move on with your life. Do you do kind of a children's version of this and have kids have a certain type of savings account? How do you balance this out for kids? How do you break apart money that they might have coming in, whether it's through their commissions or maybe they have a lawn mowing service, or like my daughter, that girl, she's always selling stuff to the neighbors. It's hilarious. Um, and so just trying to figure out, how do we best teach our kids to get to the 7 steps as adults when they're children?
Yeah, so we have this incredible curriculum called Foundations in Personal Finance. You can find it at ramseysolutions.com/homeschool. We have one specifically geared to the homeschool market. And this is just incredible. I got to work on this project and it's been around for years. I got to be in the latest update. And it's amazing because it takes all the things that we wished we would have known in
Hmm.
high school, and it literally teaches it in a way that's easy to digest for students, and it gets them prepared for the real world. I mean, it's simple enough that kids can understand it, but it actually tackles the real topics we need to know, like taxes, saving, investing, how to pay off debt, how to avoid debt completely, how to
Hmm.
rent your first apartment, how to buy a car. All these things that so many of us got into the real world and we're like, wait, what? How do we do that? It explains that in a way that they can digest.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. My oldest daughter is doing it right now. And she had started with the workbook and DVD program last year. Um, and then this year she moved into doing the new online version that you have. And it's fantastic. You guys have done such a great job with it. And it's made specifically for teenagers and for homeschoolers. And so it's easy for them to understand. It's easy for them to just digest and be able to put it into practical world, real world practice. And so I love what you guys have done with that.
Yeah, I've
And
been on the
tell
team
us the
for
website again. I'm sorry.
ramseysolutions.com/homeschool.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been on the team for a year and a half. And when I first came in and saw what they did with the Foundations project, I was just blown away. I
Yeah.
was like, that is literally what we all wanted growing up.
Right. Right. Yeah. Again, because if you're not going to use algebra as an adult, I'm not saying people shouldn't do algebra. I know people are going to yell at me. They have. have to do algebra. Fine. Do algebra with your kids if you must, but also
Right.
teach them to handle their finances.
Let's get practical things. I posted something last night on Instagram where it was somebody saying, I'm really glad I learned about parallelograms instead of taxes. That's really going to help me this parallelogram season.
Right.
And I just think that's so funny because it's like we did learn about so many things that I'm sure it's helpful to engineers or maybe a doctor or a scientist. But for most of us who are not in those fields, we're not using them in our everyday life. So to have some of these practical things that are actual topics that you're going to tackle literally every day of your life, it's so important.
Homeschool Insights is sponsored by CTC Math. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com and try it for free. For more great homeschool inspiration and resources, listen to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.